Hi, Jessica. Can you hear us? Perfect. Good.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, I can hear you.
I read your lips. I'm getting really good at that since we do virtual meetings. Lizzie, are you on the phone?
Yeah, it's Lizzie. I couldn't get on Zoom, so I'm on the phone.
Okay, perfect.
Well,
Hello, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Arts Commission March meeting already. So our mission is to develop, advance, and nurture all facets of the arts to enhance the quality of life for Meridian residents and their visitors.
This is Tom. I see Bonnie speaking, but I don't hear her. Can you hear and see me?
Bonnie is muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so let's do roll call. Lizzie Taylor,
I'm here, but on the phone only.
Jessica Peters,
I'm here.
Natalie Schofield,
Here.
Bonnie, I'm here. Leslie Malden, Maria,
Here.
Jennifer, Thomas,
Here.
Rhea,
Here.
Joe Borton. Okay, so we have a quorum. The adoption of the agenda. Could I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Madam, I move that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
To adopt is carried. Approval of the minutes from the February 11th meeting.
So moved.
Leslie,
Move that we approve.
do we have a second for that?
I second.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approval for the minutes has been carried. Approval of the monthly financial statement. We have that.
I move that we approve the monthly financial statement.
We have a second.
Tom seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Financial statement is approved. Okay, so let's go to the reports. An update from the Events and Outreach Subcommittee.
We actually have not, let me see, let's look at our calendar. We are changing our meeting time. So there's not a whole lot to report. We will be meeting again before the next meeting. But in February, yeah. So we're just moving along in a development year, still trying to figure out, we're still kind of in a holding pattern about whether or not we can hold the concerts on Broadway. And working on some creative direction input from a company that we are looking at having present to. We're also working very closely with Parks and Rec on that creative direction to see how we can move forward with more cohesive events and outreach as a city for citywide artistic direction. That's basically where we are. Tom, do you want to add to that, because you have brought this creative direction to the forefront?
Sure, I can add that the presentation and or high-level concept creative integrity presented to us to the subcommittee
Yes.
is just that, very high level, and was intended to be listed as a menu item. And also it was structured that it could be rolled out over a 2 to 3 year time frame. There was no expectation for that presentation to happen all in 2021. However, there might be, as Leslie said, when we have an opportunity to connect with Parks and Rec, there may be an opportunity to, I guess the best phrase is cherry pick what we think out of that high level concept will work in 2021, and then to build on top of that as we move forward.
Yes, and we'll have a more full report after we get our regular meeting rescheduled, which is, my bad because I have a conflict. So we'll have more to report in April. Thanks, Tom.
Number 4 on the agenda is an update from the Arts Inclusivity Meridian Subcommittee.
Yes, thank you. We met yesterday, the subcommittee met yesterday, and Audrey, are you able to share the screen of the revised document I sent?
Yes.
As Audrey is pulling that up, we had an excellent progressive conversation and discussion yesterday about primarily the purpose of AIM. What is AIM's purpose, and how will AIM support, augment, and help the commission, the broader commission, move forward? This was adopted yesterday, and then this is for the consideration of the entire Arts Commission. We chose that instead of making either an internal mission or vision statement, I proposed, and we've adopted and discussed, that we want to call it a manifesto. And in so doing, it gives it tangible, actionable items. The top part you'll notice is something that I think is really quite relevant to what we do here at the Meridian Arts Commission. It's even though it's Wikipedia, and we take Wikipedia definitions into with a grain of salt. However, there's some really quite compelling statements in there. I'm happy to read it, but I also don't want to take the time of the commission. But I think some of the things that I'll just point out, some of the things that stood out to us, particularly offering art or things that solve a problem The cultural consumer consumes everything that we do at the Art Commission. And they want, in other words, they believe, the cultural consumer believes what they can experience needs to be authentic, paramount in stories, and can communicating messages. We can read that further if needed be. If needed be, there's good speak, if need be. What we did then as the committee has developed this manifesto, AIM will target the cultural consumer. This is obviously for consideration with the broader Art Commission. No cultural consumer should ever feel marginalized or excluded. Therefore, AIM will foster unity through inclusion, and that will happen with all of our subcommittees and then the broader Art Commission as it sits. AIM will ensure attention to non-homogenization through all touch points of the creative production and realization process. That specifically speaks to our process in everything we do. What are those touch points? How did we exhaust our capabilities in reaching out to marginalized communities for artist selection, for if we are to hire companies, artists, if we are to hire a piece of art that we want developed? How do we, when we partner with, if we're allowed to partner with Parks and Rec, what are the touch points? Are we making sure that we've exhausted all of those touch points? We will ensure a shared experience for all participants, residents, and visitors. And we added visitors because I think, quite honestly, particularly with the work that we're doing in the events and outreach, that we know Meridian is not in a silo, clearly. And so we have visitors coming to Meridian, and we want that experience for them to be as solid as anybody as our current residents, because then that takeaway will drive more people to Meridian for visitors, et cetera. We were very inspired by the graphic that you see there. And we started with the equality equity graphic, and then we added the justice graphic. And I think what I'm particularly drawn to, and the subcommittee was drawn to, is that justice graphic, they're not just solving the problem of equality and equity, they're rethinking it. So by rethinking the problem of not everybody having equal or equitable vision, they were out of the box. And so instead of just adding different types of risers, change the fence. So that particularly was important for us. AIM will monitor the Meridian Arts Commission's equality, equity, and justice with those three graphics. And we're hoping that we're submitting this for consideration to the Arts Commission, that everything that the Art Commission does, that we think about this, and have we exhausted all of those touch points? And then we'll motivate Meridian's cultural consumers. And this is where we've arrived for consideration to the Art Commission.
You guys put some great thought into that. It's great. Thank you. Number 5 on the agenda is the Initial Point Gallery Committee report. Natalie?
Yep, that's me. We did not have a meeting this last month. We were unsure if City Hall would open up, but City Hall did open and we were able to do the install on Friday. The TVAA show is up and available to see during City Hall hours. But that's all we have for now until we meet at the end of the month and move forward. Now that City Hall's open, we can keep moving forward with our schedule.
So did you do a opening on Friday?
I did not.
Madam Chair, this is Lizzie. Sorry, I'm only on the phone. I hosted the opening. It was very, very successful. We had 52 people, which is, I think, extremely good given the circumstances that we're all living in. And I think a particular note is that Mark Newman, who is the general manager of the Meridian Co-op, was there, which is wonderful because, you know, the co-op is going to be getting their mural. So he's all excited about that. So it was very, very nice. So, yeah, it was a great opening.
Great. Looks like it's a great show.
And
It's
Madam
beautiful.
Chair, if I may add to Lizzie's statement, I was able to attend, and I was impressed with not only the volume and quantity of guests visiting, but the demographic was really, I had my eyes opened on the demographic. There were age groups that really spanned all generations. And I thought that was really lovely. And actually some of the arts, but what I noticed and recognized, some of the art spoke to all of the different generational groups, even the youngins. I had a 5-year-old niece who attended who couldn't take her eyes off of the troll. There was a piece of art that was about the Trolls doll, and she was fascinated how that was happened. So I was very impressed with the opening.
Number 6 on the agenda is a report about House Bill.
Madam Chair,
Oh, I'm sorry.
can I just read into the record that it's wonderful that we had 52 people. I just wanted to reiterate, just for the public record, that it is an open house format. And so I don't imagine at any one time we were above the 50-person gathering limit at this point in time, because people come in as an open house. So 52 was the total amount over the evening. Just that
That's correct.
Yeah.
Thanks, Leslie.
Yeah. Thank you.
So number 6 on the agenda is a report about the House Bill number 253 regarding public art. Audrey, would you like to enlighten us?
Yes, Madam Chair and Commissioners, this is something new that's going on in our arts community here in Idaho. A correction on just a note for the agenda title. It says House Bill 253. Since this agenda was published, the House Bill was renamed to House Bill 311. So a bill was introduced in the Idaho State Legislature, and the bill is that any artwork over $25,000 would need to pass by public vote by a 2/3 majority. This would greatly impact our public arts program, given that the majority of our public art installations cost more than $25,000. The only art projects in our collection that are under $25,000 are our mural series. Those 3 murals individually cost less than $25,000, and our traffic box series. However, any sculpture installation, those generally and have cost more than $25,000. So this would greatly impact our public art program. I attended virtually. I tuned into the committee discussion on the bill. It was presented in the Revenue and Taxation Committee, I think is what it was. And there was an introduction by the representative, Von Ellinger, who introduced the bill. There was about 30 minutes of public testimony by several arts administrators from Boise and Ketchum, and then a handful of public artists, and testifying in opposition to the bill, stating how it would negatively affect the public art programs. And in the committee discussion, there was a lot of discussion. Ultimately, the motion that was passed was asking the sponsor of the bill, Representative Von Ellinger, to make amendments to the bill to include commentary on projects that are publicly and privately funded, those partnerships. So the committee asked Representative Von Ellinger to amend it, and then it will be presented on the House floor. The voting in the House will happen, I don't believe it's been scheduled yet. At least I don't know if it's been scheduled yet. So it will likely happen next week. So that's the information that we have about it now.
Madam Chair, did they, I understood originally this was in Ways and Means, so they moved it, they upped it from 10,000 to 25,000.
That's right.
And then, so so it's, obviously it's made it, we were hoping that because it had a hard edge of the 8th to get it in shape to go to the floor. Yeah, so do you remember if when they were in committee, if they said as amended, did they come up with the language for the public-private, or does it have to go back to the committee before it can be heard on the floor with those amendments having to do with public and private?
From my understanding, it is going back for amendments, but then the next time it's not going back to committee, it's going directly back to the House floor.
So it's going back directly to the House. It's not going back to committee to read the amendments, for reading on the amendments. Okay,
I don't think so.
that's unfortunate. Okay. I'm going to reach back out I'm doing a little further research on that to see, because this would be the time, Madam Chair, that we would need to have a presence, and let me see who the lobbyist is. And if there's a lobbyist that's being utilized, we can ask the lobbyist for talking points, and we may need to show up if we can when they debate it, have a presence in the gallery, because numbers really matter in legislation. They really make a difference. We can fill the gallery with people that are, or reach out into the community and, just do our part, reach out to other arts commissions and see what can be done. Sometimes just being present, but I don't know what, with COVID, that's not. Emily, I see you've come to join us.
So this
Madam-
definitely has an impact on what we do, and so this might be a time for all of us and anyone else that to be reaching out to your legislators, however you feel about the proposed bill.
Yes, reach out to your Madam Chair, reach out to your legislatures, and also keep in mind at the end of the day that this form of a bill goes to the governor's desk before it has life. So there's still that desk to get passed, even if it passes on the floor of the House and moves on to the Senate and passes there. But yeah, everybody reach out, and maybe we could come up with some language that is specific and targeted that we could send, because if they see consistent messaging, that helps as well. Concise and consistent messaging. So maybe we could come up with some language that would be effective for everybody to send to their specific legislators.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, it's Emily.
Really?
Thank you. I think this is great. This is, you're right that this is the way to affect change. This is the one time I will tell you that this is work that largely you need to do offline. And again, weird that I'm saying this, but you're welcome to talk to each other over email or have meetings about this. And I say that because as you contact your legislators or the governor or whatever you decide to do, you're acting as private citizens. The city, you're welcome to say that you serve on the Meridian Arts Commission, but if you do say that, it needs to also be clear that you're not representing the city, because the city has kind of its own process for addressing legislation that affects Meridian and other cities. For this one, I wish I could tell you specifically what the effort is. I believe we're working through the Association of Idaho Cities to kind of marshal a statewide effort to address this bill. And of course, it's not the only one that affects cities that's pending. So you can even continue in this meeting to talk about talking points or language, but I just wanted to chime in and say that unfortunately the commission can't really take a position as a body, and you as individuals can't represent the city. But again, I would encourage you to act as individuals, because this is certainly a cause near and dear to all of you.
It could be helpful if Emily can at least provide us with some stats as to what previous works of art that we've installed, what those costs are, so that there's some clear talking points if somebody's so inclined to send a email or letter to their legislator.
I think
Madam Chair, and Audrey, do we know if there's a lot of evolution in this bill since the last time I've been able to take a moment with it? Did they also change? Because one of the key things that I thought was one of the biggest problems with the language is that it said a 2/3 vote of the registered voters, not of the voters, a 2/3 vote of the percentage that shows up to vote. And that is an absolutely devastating part of the verbiage in this bill. Because especially for issues like this, we have trouble getting people out for anything but a presidential election in large numbers. I mean, the midterms and certainly levies and those types of things have a very, very low percentage. So essentially, if that language is still in this current form, there would be no more public art over $25,000 legally installed in the state of Idaho, unless you got 2/3 of the voting public. So did we hear any, was that one of the amendments that they made?
Madam Chair and Commissioners, it wasn't discussed in the meeting, but I agree that is a significant note, but it wasn't, I'm unsure about that detail.
If it wasn't discussed, it wasn't changed, Madam Chair. Yeah, a little left.
Hi, Madam Chair. I'm just looking into Bill, I think you said 311, the
That's right.
details. It says here on the second point, on B, it's saying that if the total cost of the art project is $25,000 or more, the expenditure must be approved by a 60% majority of the qualified electors of the taxing district voting on the question at an election held for that purpose on a date authorized. So I think that means it has, I mean, people have to come out and vote to say yes. And
Yeah.
Qualified electors, I don't know, that's pretty vague language.
correct. It can go either way, I guess, as long as it's 60% of the people show up, or
Madam Chair, this is everyone registered to vote. Qualified elector means everyone who is eligible to vote.
Yes.
Eligible or registered to?
Registered
Big
to
difference.
vote.
Okay, registered to.
Yes, you're only eligible if you're registered. So
Right.
yeah.
Madam Chair? So Emily, notwithstanding the legalese and language of these types of bills, can you just in one or two sentences, for those of us like me, what does it mean? We can sit here and read the language as it pertains to what we do. Just bottom line it. Let's say this thing passes. What does that mean?
It means that the Madam Chair, Commissioners, it means that the Arts Commission can, well, as it is now, you're a recommending body. So the Arts Commission can still recommend to City Council, and City Council can approve public art projects that basically that spend general fund dollars, so city money, to install artwork up to $25,000. So we can invest $25,000 in art, just as we do now. You're already a recommending body, so the 2/3 majority vote of City Council is really something you already work within. If you wish to install a public art project that costs more than $25,000 of city money, then that would have to be on the ballot And that is a process that I believe we have to have the ballot language to the city clerk somewhere around Labor Day. Sorry, not the city clerk, the county clerk. The county runs all municipal elections. So that would have to be on the ballot for a municipal election. Ironically, there's another bill pending that would move municipal elections from odd years to even years. So voter turnout would likely be a lot higher than it is now. I believe that Meridian is, we have high voter turnout in Meridian. I'm not sure it's at 60% of all registered voters. It certainly was last time. So it is of course more challenging to have, because then of course the voters would have to vote in favor of that art project. And if they vote no, then you're either capped at $25,000 for that project or the project can't proceed.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I had another question for Audrey. So the amendments that they're going to make is just wordage to regarding public-private. So if it's $25,000, but it's only really $12,500 that the city is, covering, and the other half is being covered by private, that is not part of this scenario where we have to get vote, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. Madam Chair and Commissioners, the solution wasn't given. In the committee discussion, the committee brought up a concern about what about projects that are public and privately funded? What about in those cases? What will we do then? So they didn't discuss a solution to that question. They only discussed we should make note about that. And they just noted that they didn't want they didn't want a public vote for private money, only public money. And so I don't know how the amendment will turn out. They didn't say how to amend. They just said, please make some amendment to comment on these situations, and then it'll be given to the House floor.
Madam Chair, Audrey, I don't know how they could possibly not take it back to committee with the amendments before they present it to the House without it, unless they'd come up with specific language as amended to approve and move forward to the House. I do think this will have to go back on the committee agenda prior to going to the House, unless.
Madam Chair.
That's interesting.
Yes, Emily.
It's been sent to the House amending order, so the House acts as the committee. And kind of messes with the language as the whole body.
Madam Chair, what a mess.
Madam Chair, this is Tom. I have one other question for clarity for Emily, because I'm trying to make sure that our commission wraps their brains around is how this will either negatively or positively affect us. Clearly, this is targeted at public art, which we know in our subcommittee needs to be concerned with the outcome of this. How does this relate to the events and special outreach committee? For instance, if we are presenting a topical issue, if we partner with Parks and Rec for a holiday engagement for our residents, and as we partner with Parks and Rec, we also reach out for private funding through connections of Parks and Rec, and we are generating an experience, a holiday experience. How does that relate to this bill? Does it, and I'm not trying to, I just need clarity. How does it relate to us?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I don't read this to apply to performing arts. I think this is really for
Visual.
physical, visual art. So, because it talks about design, construction, installation, or purchase of public art. To my knowledge, public art is not defined. This is the tax, it's kind of like the miscellaneous provision of the tax code. So it's, I don't think it talks about public art. So if you read it really expansively, of course, art includes performing arts, but talking about design, construction, installation, purchase, those are really kind of public works types of language. So to answer your question, I don't think this would have any bearing on that particular project or others like it.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
If I could correct myself, I'm so sorry. It is defined, it's defined in section 2. And these are visual arts. So it is not applicable to performing arts. I was so fixated on the $25,000, I forgot about its own definition, but it's in there. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just have a question just to kind of go back to something that Emily had said before regarding the vote. So just to make clear that I'm understanding properly, if we had public art projects funded with city funding that were above $25,000 and the public would need to vote on this, the opportunity for that would only take place every 2 years. Is that right?
Is that correct, Emily?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, yes. So I believe that there could be a special election. However, that is expensive. So that's unlikely. It's not impossible to have a special election just for this. Special elections are really poorly attended, so I don't think that would be a good investment. So given that and the cost itself, I'm not sure that would happen. So practically speaking, yes, it would just be every 2 years.
Thank you, Emily. Yeah, thinking about this is something that we would be doing every year. So we would have to possibly think ahead. And if we had to request a proposal to be put on the ballot, we would have to perhaps think about 2 projects. So thinking a year ahead to make sure that we would be able to accomplish what we want to accomplish over the next 2 years before the next vote is available. So we should be keeping that in mind as well.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, there's also I agree with you, and it does also need to be approved at the budget hearing. So I believe this, as it is now, that funds are allocated for the Arts Commission, and we talk about what that money is for, but the budget hearing is not really where we talk about a specific piece of art. So as this is written, that the budget hearing would envision a specific amount allocated for a piece of art. And if that's over $25,000, it does contemplate, obviously, years down the road, or maybe that year, the timeline, I think, would be really tricky. But that is an extra step you'd have to build into your timeline.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I have another question for Emily. Public art, I see on the definition in section 2. Do you think, in your opinion, that this includes temporary art installations, or are these more permanent art installations?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I think that distinction is not made. So if it's on display, even temporarily, I believe that it does contemplate that it would comply with these provisions.
Discussion? There's actually, I think it came out today in the Idaho Press. There's another article that was published today, so you can access through idahopress.com about the
Thank you for that.
details. Okay, let's move on to new business. Number 7, approve call to artists for the new traffic box artwork repository.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll introduce my research. If you remember, last meeting, we reviewed the traffic box repository call to artists, and a question was brought up about how we compare in how much we offer to our artists as compensation.
Right.
And so I took on this research project. I didn't, I contacted all of the Idaho cities that I know have traffic box wraps. And then I did a Google search of other calls to artists for traffic box wraps. And this is a national, there are cities across the nation that do this kind of project. So I gathered all the ones that I could find in a list, and I found about, I think it was about 25 cities. And I read their calls to artists and saw how much they paid their artists. And I ordered them from smallest population to largest population, because I was curious to see if population size dictated how much their programs could pay their artists. And the population, to be honest, the population size didn't affect that payment number, hardly at all. So if you open the attachment, you'll see the list of cities, their population size, and what they offer as a stipend to their artists, and then the year, if I could find it, that the call to artist was posted. Meridian, of course, is highlighted in red. We're about in the middle in regards to population size. Idaho cities are highlighted in yellow, and then Billings, Montana is the closest in population size to us. So I highlighted them in blue. As you can see, the average cost or average stipend amount is $572. So right about between $500 and $600 is the going rate for paying artists for their artwork on traffic boxes. So I also wanted to point out that there were 1, 2, 3, 4. Out of this list, not including us, there were only 4 other cities that paid under $500. So that puts us in the minority and kind of the bottom of the range. If the commission decides to increase that payment amount, it would impact these funds come out of our MAPS funding. So each year we get $50,000 from the city for all public art. That includes any public art installation and our traffic box wraps. So it would cost it would cost more out of that fund, but that just means that we would adjust. I don't think it would do any significant, it wouldn't have as significant of an impact in our general funding.
Chair, it seems to me that
did you pull up the information from Idaho Falls? Because they have kind of an interesting concept. They wrap, or they have wrapped a series of traffic boxes that are along there. I believe they're Riverwalk with existing pieces from their permanent collection from the Eastern Idaho Museum. So that was an interesting.
That is interesting.
And I think they only asked, I don't think there was any remuneration to the artist other than just asking for their permission to use their art on the boxes.
So, Madam Chair, I think the question is on the table, how much is the commission willing to pay the artists for this work? My recommendation would be about average, go with the average between $500 and $600. We could do 550, we could do 500, we could do 600, and we can one afford that, and it will put us more in the market value of what this project costs.
And so this will come from the committee.
No, we can decide that. We need to decide it today, yeah.
So is there a consensus? Any discussion regarding the change of stipend for traffic box art?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I'm looking at this and looking right at our closest neighbors, Nampa and Boise.
Yeah.
And Nampa's at 700. I definitely think that, I think it's interesting that Sacramento comes in at 5. I think that that's interesting. Some of the places this is really all over the map, but I completely agree that we need to bring this into range. I would err towards $600 to bring us at least within range, closer range of our 2 closest neighbors. I mean, Boise's a capital city, and so I think that there's some explanation there, but being behind Nampa is, we need to be closer there, in my opinion.
Madam Chair, I have a question. So every year, Meridian Development Corporation sponsors a couple of traffic boxes. I agree with Leslie. I think that $600 is fair. So I support that. Thank you, Leslie, for bringing that up. But I'm wondering if we might also be able to speak with Meridian Development Corporation about any opportunities to support more traffic boxes or be more involved in some way that would help us kind of make up that gap, because we will be able to wrap fewer boxes if we are providing a larger stipend. So maybe we can look elsewhere for additional funding, or we may be able to, I'm wondering if Idaho Commission on the Arts would provide us some funding. It may not be every year, but may be able to match what we're spending from our MAPS budget to make sure that we don't have to reduce the number of boxes, or at least not by very much, in order to provide a fair stipend to the artists, but also keep up with our planned number of traffic boxes every year.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I think that's a really good idea about finding funding. One comment about MDC. MDC currently funds the second half of our traffic box series, which is the student wraps from the West Ada School District. Of course, this is a different case. We don't provide the students with that full stipend. I think we give them about $50. But to my understanding, MDC's funding is limited to within their district. So all the boxes, we just finished wrapping all of the boxes in the URD last year. So this year for those boxes, we're going to have to go back and re-wrap our oldest boxes. Does that make sense? We've made it full circle there, and now it's time to remove the old boxes and replace them with new this year within that district. So that's been my understanding. I can double check that, that their funds are limited to a geographic area.
Madam Chair, this is Tom. Based on Jessica and Audrey's input, do we have an opportunity for the language to read not to exceed? By the way, I agree that we are low and that we should consider raising, but to give ourselves the ability for instance, I would hate to see us locked into a scenario where if we have $420 left, total speculation, $420 left in a fund to wrap a traffic box, and we find an artist who is very hungry to have their art displayed and willing to do it for $420, that we're not locked into that language that it has to be $600. Can we create an appropriate scenario where we are stipending the artist appropriately without locking our hands that it has to be X? So can it be something to not to exceed?
Is that, Emily, do you want to address that?
Sorry, couldn't find my buttons. Madam Chair, Commissioners, I'd recommend that you settle on a specific amount, just because Audrey needs to update the information for the artists. So that might be a good place to start, but I think in the end, the motion should be for a specific number.
Does that then lock us to that number that we could not make an offer of a less amount to maybe a less qualified artist or someone who's not as experienced? Do we have flexibility?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, yes, once that number is decided, it's the same for everybody. So what you're talking about is more along the lines of a request for qualifications, and then kind of evaluating how much to pay after that. Honestly, government agencies almost never do that with anything. It's really an offered amount, unless it's a bid, for example. If parties want to submit a bid for how much they would do, and that's almost always a low bidder situation. So this is not that. This is essentially, it's not a fee in the classic sense, but it's essentially a set amount, like a fee that you would pay to everybody.
So Emily, is there a consideration, or could there be a different stipend for student art as opposed to professional art?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, in theory, yes. If you're going to do that, I would almost recommend that you have a separate call so that it's either by age or student status. It's hard to sort folks into professional and amateur. So it really is kind of an experience. You're kind of assuming experience and age go together. So I think that would be the better way to do that, to have a student project and a professional artist project. And that way you don't have two different values within the same call or the same project.
Yeah.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I have another question with Emily regarding what seems to be a tier system that's been been discussed. So like a student tier, and then you have the professional tier of artists that have a separate call, possibly a separate call for. With your point about kind of hard to distinguish professional versus amateur, is it a better distinction to say community member versus a professional artist distinction?
Madam Chair, Commissioners,
Or I guess
I think we've run into this in other contexts. So for example, the tax code of all things kind of talks about a professional and I think it's hobbyist is the word that's used.
Right.
And arguably once you've sold one piece of art for 25 cents, even to your mom, I think you now are a professional artist. So if that's the distinction, it's a kind of a weird area. It's almost like, what do you consider yourself? And there's, do you do anything else for your livelihood? And, for students, obviously that's kind of a different calculus. It is a hard call to make, even for the IRS. So I think that when you mention tiers, I think you can almost have different categories if you wanted to keep them within the same. But if you are wanting to distinguish between professional and amateur versus student and not student, I think it would take some wordsmithing, which Audrey and I can do that. We're good at that, but that is really challenging, even in any context, I would say.
Right.
Madam Chair, Maria,
go
did
ahead,
you,
Leslie. No.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, there's a long established precedent in the arts world, in the classical arts world, of the student artist. Oftentimes you'll have a violinist that will be playing at a very, very high level in high school, in living in a regional community where you may have an artist that's considered a headliner locally that possibly is not technically as skilled as the high schooler, but there's a very distinct long tradition and precedent of student artists receiving stipends, receiving performance opportunities, as opposed to such as other entertainment worlds where Theater Equity and Screen Actors Guild have different contracting because they need child actors to portray children. So they are seeing their day rate will be negotiated by their agent in the same way that the adult, because they are playing something that is essentially not replaceable with a professional. And so I think that we could go with that precedent. The words student artist are very, very well established in the entertainment world. And it's understood, if this is in dance, this is in the ballet, the symphony, the opera. I'm not as familiar with the visual art, but the word student artist, the assumption is in precedent that this is a stipended learning artist that's not yet a professional. It's like the difference between an amateur athlete and a professional athlete. And it's understood. And I really think that it's a good precedent to set, because it allows, we do exactly the same thing in Concerts on Broadway with the opening acts. We get young artists that are the award winners from the symphony competition, but we put them in front of the same audience that the headliners perform for. So it's the same venue, just like the art box racks are the same, but they're student artists and they're put in as opening acts, but it's the same audience base. So I don't know if we could take some of that language from that, but there's long tradition of this in the arts. So I don't know if that's even helpful. I'm muting myself now.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yes.
if I understand it correctly, the original question was more of a budgetary question.
Yes.
And it sounds like a lot of this is very sticky, and I'm just wondering what we're trying to solve. Are we trying to solve not coming in exactly on budget, or something else?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just wanted to add my comments to Jennifer, where we do have, so the questions is that I'm hearing in the commission is, can we pay some artists less and some artists more? And the question is, well, yes, students. We have a lot of student traffic boxes installed each year in from the West Ada School District annual art show. And this call to artists is for the traffic box repository. So I think for simplicity's sake, to make one number and that just is across the board, I want to emphasize that we have the budget for this. Increasing it is just, the cost of the project is increasing and we can still adjust and we can still afford this project even with increase. It means that we can put extra effort into finding grants and that will help us. But we can still afford it. And for, I think, simplicity's sake and for just the ease of the project, this is a simple project and I'd prefer to keep it simple. We can just pick a number and move forward from there.
Madam Chair, given the discussion, and I really appreciate everyone's thoughts and ideas. I think it's great to be thinking about different ways to approach, the things that we do, even if they end up not being the avenue that we select. So I think it's great to hear all these different ideas. But I do agree with Audrey that I think it's best to just select one number and stick with it. And I will volunteer the Public Arts Subcommittee to have some discussions about how we may be able to find some extra funding to support the traffic box wrap. So I'm going to throw out a motion, or I'm going to put out a motion to set the stipend at $600 so that we can move forward with this. And we'll have some further discussions about how we can increase our funding because, as Audrey said, it's not just MDC, the MDC district that we're going to need to rewrap. I think we're coming up with some other traffic boxes that are going to be rewrapped. And there is so much construction happening in Meridian that there are still traffic boxes that are either existing that haven't been wrapped or that may be new as roads change and more traffic lights are put in and things like that. So our funding needs are only going to increase even if we didn't, we had a need for more funding even if we didn't increase the stipend. So this is motivation for us to find more funding for this.
So Madam Chair, Commissioners, was that a motion to increase to 600, right? The stipend?
Yep.
Second.
Okay, all in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion has been carried that we will increase the traffic box art to $600 for installation. Good job. Number 8 on the agenda is approve the request for proposals for the 10-mile trailhead public art installation.
Madam Chair, as a brief introduction, this request for proposals has been reviewed by the Parks and Rec Department and Emily in legal and has been cleared through them. So we just are looking for the final confirmation from the commission for this. As a description and a review for the commission, this is a request for proposals that we will be sending to the parks artist roster. This means that several years ago, the Parks and Rec Department, in conjunction with the Arts Commission, I believe, sent out a request for qualifications and selected 3 artists to put on a roster for any projects that we do with Parks and Rec. So this request for proposals will go to 3 artists, those 3 artists, for the project located at the 10-mile trailhead, which is currently under construction and will be completed this spring. We don't have a dead estimate for completion for this project. We're going to leave that up for the artists to kind of tell us when they can finish it. Maybe this fall, maybe this winter, depending on what kind of installation they're looking at. It could be this spring if they need the weather to be warm, or next spring, I'm saying.
Yeah.
We will issue it. The plan is to issue it on this next coming Monday, March 15th, we'll have a pre-proposal conference for the artists and the Parks and Rec representatives. On March 24th, proposals will be due on May 19th, and then the artists will give presentations with their proposals on May 26th. At that point, the selection panel will select the artist and the project for the installation, and the timeline will continue from there. The selection panel will present the selected artist to the commission at our June meeting. And then city council will hopefully have it approved by July, at least have it on their agenda in July.
Madam Chair, and Audrey, or maybe Emily, you could answer this. If this legislation we talked about prior passes,
Yeah.
it said anything after July will be affected by that new bill. So if we, City Council, approves everything by June, does that mean we are in the clear to complete that project without a vote?
Should.
Madam Chair, I believe that's correct. Even if the legislation passes, this project could proceed no matter what, without the voters being involved.
Okay. Thank you.
Stipulates that the language.
Mhm.
So can we get a motion then on the proposal for the 10-mile trailhead installation?
I motion to approve the proposal, the RFP for the 10-mile trailhead installation.
Maria seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
I
Okay, so that has passed. Number 9 on the agenda is the Art Week 2021 dates.
Yes, Madam Chair and Commissioners, I wanted to bring this to the commission for discussion. As you know, Art Week, the last handful of years has been held the week following Labor Day weekend, with most of the activities focused on the weekend after Labor Day weekend. In talking with our special events coordinator in the Parks and Rec department, who we will be collaborating with in Art Week in 2021. Just some concerns were brought up about the date and the conflict with Boise's major event, Art in the Park. I believe, Art in the Park always happens that weekend. It is one of the Valley's biggest arts events. And so far, we haven't had any serious conflicts with that. We've been able to hold it at the same time. If we have plans for this to continue to grow, and our collaboration with the Parks and Rec department really kind of amps up Art Week. It gives us more resources. It really is giving us a steroid in growth, at least for this year, and in the years to come. Hopefully, we can make it bigger. As we get bigger, that could prove more of a concerning conflict where artists, if we want artists to, visual artists mainly, to have booths or to come do live demonstrations or anything like that, artists will have to choose between Art in the Park and our Art Week, things like that. So, like I said, it hasn't proven any challenges yet, but there could be challenges down the road if we continue to grow this event. Even things such as renting, if we have to go to outside vendors for renting tents and things like that, there could be more competition there. So those concerns were brought up, and I wanted to talk to the commission about them to see if we wanted to get ahead of the game and adjust our dates. It could be as simple as moving it back a week, or we could move it to the end of August. There is also some challenges there. There's never going to be the perfect time. I just wanted to be conscious and discuss with the commission about the conflict that this year and our years to come may present us with.
And there's a proposed art festival that's happening at Kleiner Park.
Yes, in Meridian. Yes, I don't know the latest on that. It won't be during Art Week though. I think it's going to be in.
Is it in August?
I think it's in August. I had
Late August.
Yeah, I haven't got an update on it in a while though, so I'm not sure.
It's an art festival organizer that does I believe it's the Sun Valley show now. And they had proposed doing an art festival in Eagle over Mother's Day weekend. And then the last I heard, they changed it to, I think like the last week or the second to the last weekend of August in Kleiner Park, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just FYI.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I really think that our rather new alliance as far as working together with Parks and Rec, what we discussed, there's just so many positive things about it. And like Madam Chair, like you said, it's going to be difficult to find, and as the Valley grows, it's going to be difficult to find times when there aren't competing events. I still think that being consistent with our dates that we've established, and now adding a collaboration with Parks and Rec, I think that's a good thing. I prefer to stay where we are, and I mean, just it's my 2 cents.
With the same week that we've been doing it. Yeah. Did you take action on this?
Yeah, if there's no other comments, then sure.
So is there a motion to keep it the same dates as previous or something else?
I move that we keep it at the dates as is.
Second.
Madam Chair and Commissioner, I just need point of clarity. If we vote to keep the date the same, I understand that repetitive is good as far as dates and recognition, but I would ask the commission, will we realize the best possible event on that date? Do we have, because now we're going to move forward with collaborating with Parks and Rec, there may be opportunities to do a better, bigger, broader event that affects or impacts our residents that may not be that date. So for instance, to your point, Madam Chair, if the Sun Valley Art Festival is this incredible festival, why wouldn't we want to incorporate that into Art Week so that Art Week is all inclusive as opposed to these disparate events? I offer that prior to moving forward with the motion.
Discussion.
Madam Chair and Audrey, yeah, that's an interesting point. And I think, but with Parks and Rec, they had canceled the block party, right? And we're going to do this. So would they be flexible to consider what Tom is proposing consider, instead of competing in, working in combination with this art and combining it as a collaboration? Would they be?
Madam Chair and Commissioners, we definitely thought of that as well, and we offered, and I think it was declined.
Shoot.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, as usual, Lizzie is somewhat confused. When is this Sun Valley thingy in Kleiner Park happening? What is the physical date of that?
Madam Chair, it's Emily. I have some information about that. Just yesterday, the organizer of that event submitted their application and had a pre-application meeting, and the date of the event is August 28th and 29th at Kleiner Park.
Thank you, Emily.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, would they decline a collaborative event? Would they decline some advertisement in Kleiner Park at their? Could we possibly use it to show that there's more art coming, as use it as a primer for it, since it's not a competitive date, since they weren't interested in that? Maybe they would allow us to put up an advertisement for Art Week.
Madam Chair, I think that's something we can definitely ask them.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, Lizzie again, I think it would be a very good idea to ask them. I mean, it's beginning to sound to me that they, the Sun Valley gang, for lack of a better term, is kind of making us shape what we want to do around their schedule. I'm feeling not in any particular way threatened, but it's kind of like they're calling the shots in our city. Does anybody else feel that way? It's kind of like, well, maybe we can, maybe we can't. I think we ought to find out what they are prepared to do as opposed to willing to do.
Madam Chair, their event was totally separate from us. They simply came to the Parks and Rec Department to request park space for this event, which is a normal process that the parks event does. This just happened to be an arts event. So we, in the discussions, we thought, well, hey, how about that? It would be a great idea if we could join that with Art Week. We approached them, and to my knowledge, they declined the offer and said, no, we want to do our own thing. So they're continuing to do their own thing, and that is the normal process. We saw an opportunity, but it wasn't meant to be. So they're doing their own event, and we can certainly reach out to them separately and say, we can advertise. We'd love to advertise on our social media for you. Would you please mention Art Week? That kind of thing. But that's a separate partnership from.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, from their event.
And they're very different. I mean, the art festival that the Sun Valley organizers doing is I mean, it's an event for artists to sell their work. It's not necessarily just community camaraderie and sharing art and like our art, like what I perceive our Art Week to be.
Right.
So I don't know if you would get a lot of crossover traffic even.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's would remain to be seen.
Madam Chair and other commissioners, I had a question for Audrey. So in terms of timing, in terms of an alternate date for Art Week, has Renee, Special Events Coordinator, has she proposed or has she recommended alternate dates that she's taken a look at that is available, that is something that's available with the park? Is the parks available during this time? So because right now, if the issue at hand is it might be something we want to take a look at this upcoming, then we kind of need to know if we want to change it, what does that look like? What is the date, the new dates that are possible?
That's a great question.
Mhm.
In our conversations, we discussed doing later in September and what that would look like and any changes that that would imply. We didn't look at park availability, so that was we didn't take that step. And this could be something that we do this year. This could be something that we do next year. Leslie mentioned consistency. I think so. But if we need to make a change, we can make a change and then be consistent with that from here on out. So, yeah, this is a discussion on the table. It doesn't have to happen this year. It can happen in future years. I just want to keep it top of mind for the commission.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, oh, Tom wanted to say something. Mine's really quick. I think that since we've already made a big change this year by combining with Parks and Rec, I think maybe one big change per year, per annum, if you will, might make sense.
Good point, Leslie.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, something I'd just like to enter into a broader future conversation. What this is speaking to me about is the Meridian Arts Commission's identity. And what I'm posing to the commission is, I, as a resident, if I go to, by the way, the Sun Valley Art Festival, I'm not suggesting it shouldn't happen. Let me preface with that. But I, as a resident, if I go to that, how do I know it's not a Meridian Arts Commissioned event? And so the broader topic for me that perhaps we can embrace in the near future is the commission needs to have control over identity and brand. And how does the public differentiate? And that's the motivation for my previous comment on, there's all these disparate art offerings in Meridian, and there should be. Please no, I'm not suggesting there shouldn't. But as we move forward, we have to be aware, and I think it's one of our critical missions, that how do we make sure to differentiate that brand from ours? And that I'm not trying to belabor this issue or this date specific agenda item, but this really speaks to me about that. Because if their event is on August 28 and 29, and 2 weeks later, the Art Commission has Art Week, I'm going to say, I have the potential as a resident to go, no, I don't need to go to that. There was the one that I went to this weekend. What's the difference? And that, I think that's an important element that we have to embrace as a commission in the future.
Any other thoughts?
Madam Chair, Tom, Commissioners, I agree. I think that continuity of branding is really an important concept that it's specifically what we're dealing with in the Events and Outreach Committee right now, is trying to get a creative direction and branding that looks like Meridian. And so maybe find a way to, when there's other arts things that happen, have a presence there even if we had a small presence there with not physical, but an advertisement or something that said Meridian Art Week at or be maybe the presenter offer to present this. Meridian Arts Commission presents the Sun Valley, and so give them, as opposed to become a full collaborator or trying to have control, become a presenting body, inviting, because I think it's kind of cool that Sun Valley's festival wants to come to Meridian. I have to say that it's a really good, it's a well-established art community up there, probably one of the strongest in the state, if not the strongest. Bonnie, you and Lizzie would know more on that, but I find it interesting that they're interested in coming here, but it would be nice to extend a welcoming hand through the Meridian Arts Commission to say that maybe we present them, like an opera company will present, Sun Valley Opera will present Opera Idaho when they come and perform there. So there's no official collaboration, there's no money that changes hands or something. It's just Sun Valley Opera presents Opera Idaho, like welcome to our city, and then it is defined. So just, yeah, for future discussion. I'm talking a lot today, sorry.
So I think, Leslie and commissioners, it's maybe an important note that this organizer is a newer organizer for the Sun Valley Art. So I think last year was his first year of organizing that venue. And now they're looking at expanding into the Treasure Valley. So this is not the original, this is my understanding.
Bonnie, this is Lizzie. Madam Chair and Commissioners, Bonnie, would it be possible for you to supply me, Lizzie, with the name of the person? I'm not going to do any Meridian Arts Commission business, but I would just like to see the galleries that are involved with this, because now I wish them well, but if it's like Gail Severn Gallery, it's hugely expensive. I mean, it's really a majority of the stuff in the mid
Lizzie, I don't think that there's galleries that are involved with this.
Oh,
now. I think this
okay.
is this is a separate entity, I believe.
Okay, in that case, negate whatever I said.
So Audrey, what do we need to do?
Madam Chair, from the sounds of it, we will hold our usual dates this year, and just know that in future years, this could come up again. So we'll remember the discussion, but for this year, it will stay the same.
Okay. All right. So the next meeting, we have a special meeting on March 27th. That's a Saturday, I believe, at 10 to 3.
That's correct.
And here at City Hall. And then the next regular meeting for the Meridian Arts Commission is April 8th. And if there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn the meeting. Oh, wait, sorry. Oh.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, and Emily, this is a point of order. I just received another notification about an earlier agenda item, just barely received it now. Can I add one thing to the agenda item about the House bill? It's just a point of interest.
Okay.
Is that permissible? Senator Bayer from Meridian is one of the sponsors on the bill. So whoever is in his district, that's a point of interest.
Yes, Mayor or Madam Chair, I just found out this today. For reference, Senator Regina Bayer is a District 21 senator, and District 21 is south of I-84. So anyone who lives in South Meridian, that is myself, and I know several other commissioners. So that is we are her constituents. So
Yes.
as a point of interest.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Leslie.
With that, if there's nothing else, Madam Chair, I motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all for coming.